Hello Oldhammer lovers, welcome to my Chaos Army Showcase. In this video I would like to give you the guided tour of my army that I have been working on for the past 6 months. I did a video here on YouTube a while ago showing my unpainted metal miniatures that I'd collected over the years and laid out my intention to paint them. So paint them I did as part of the Call of the Crown challenge hosted by Josh over at the Crown of Command YouTube channel and run by my friend David over at Fifth Hammer. That challenge has come to an end and I am now the proud owner of a fully painted 4,000 point Warriors of Chaos army, Green Lock Gang. I'm going to take you through each unit in the order that I painted them, talking a little bit about my colour choices, challenges and general thoughts. Let's start back in September, which was preparation month or month 0. First of all, I painted up a couple of classic monopose Chaos Warriors. I intended for these to be used as undivided for the 5th edition, and so wanted the colour scheme quite neutral. It was here the main colours for the army would stem, black and red, the accent colours being green and purple. I decided to paint the command models for the Warriors unit too, so I could ensure my scheme would work on a slightly more detailed model. The first of these was the drummer, who I think is a brilliant model with his skull face and chaos symbol embedded into his horns. Standard Bearer got the red treatment next, and I loved how these guys were painted in White Dwarf on the release month back in 1994, so that's how I did mine with the quite orangey highlights on the red. This meant that my scheme had started to look quite cornate, so I went with it and decided my army would be used as both Khorne Warriors in the 4th and Undivided Warriors in the 5th edition. Champion finished off the month's painting whilst I worked on cleaning up and priming the rest of the potential units for the challenge. October was here before I knew it, and with that my first pledge for the challenge. 7 Chaos Knights and a Chaos Lord General, who you can see here. I really enjoyed painting him up in his bright red armour, batwing helmet and freehand shield. The purple gem became a theme throughout, with every gem in the army being purple. I named him Barafor, after the general in the 5th edition Chaos Army book Example Army, Garafor. In reality, I painted the general and the knights together as a bit of a batch, to keep them consistent. I continued to do freehand on all of the shields, although the purple gems would only feature on slightly more important knights, such as the Standard Bearer. Green hair became the next theme in the army, and it would eventually evolve to become the army's name, the Green Lock Gang. I love the horse head with its tongue sticking out, shown on this steed, and it actually features on 5 of the steeds here. The knights are all based in my usual dungeon theme. I base all my armies like this so that I can use the models in games of Warhammer Quest. Because of this, I was a bit worried about painting the horses a dark colour, but I think it's safe to say that the amount of red on the miniature brightens it all back up again to a satisfying level. The Mohawk guy is probably my favourite of the standard knights, and tempting as it was to do that Mohawk multicoloured in true Chaos fashion, I stuck to my theme and did him with the green hair like the rest of his gang. standard bearer's steed got a green mohawk too. He arrived missing his banner pole top, so I made one out of the Foot Warrior's pole top instead. The banner, like the Foot Warrior's banner, was straight out of the 4th edition army book. However, I opted to keep the keyhole design at the bottom of the banner uncut, just because it looked hard to do. That brings us to the end of month 1, so I submitted my pledge to David and dug out the next batch of models. Chaos Warriors. These particular guys were released alongside the command group that I painted earlier on. Sculpted by Ali Morrison and studio scheme by Paul Muller, I believe, which is where my paint jobs were heavily influenced from. Shields featuring more free-handed Chaos Star symbols, much like the Knights from last month. However, this time the colours are reversed. Along with the free metal Chaos Warrior sculpts, I painted a couple more monopose plastics to fill out the unit to the minimum of 5 needed to meet my pledge for the Call of the Crown challenge. As a bonus this month, I painted the Chaos Warrior from Warhammer Quest, but also to be used as a Chaos hero on foot whenever I needed him for fantasy. I stuck to the army colours and I think it actually worked really well on this miniature. I was particularly pleased with my efforts on the axe handle fade. Now, as I had a few days left until the end of the month, I thought why not crack on and paint a sorcerer. So here is Baron. That's with a BH, Baharon. To make him stand out a little bit as a magic user, and because corn colours I thought would be a bit unsuitable for a magic user, I did him in the green I had used as an accent colour previously. The army was now getting on for 1500 points already, and we were only at the end of month 2. The centre pages of the 5th edition Chaos Army book contained examples of armies for each of the 3 Chaos factions: Warriors, Beastmen and Demons. To complete my version of the Warriors sample army, I would need some Chariots. So that was what I was painting in December for month 3. The chariot in the army book featured a big banner, so I copied that idea and modified my chariot to carry a magic banner of its own. I assembled these in such a way that you can remove the steeds and crew in case of casualties. I did, however, attach the scythes permanently because I didn't want them to get lost. So I thought the best way to prevent that was permanent fixture. My bonus miniature this month was another Chaos Sorcerer. This time I attached him to his base via a pin, so that he could be removed and placed in one of the chariots if I wanted, as the crew of the chariots were also pinned for removal anyway. I like how Mr. Skullface turned out, and in particular his cloak and his gems. I try to be consistent with my painting, but sometimes models just come out better than others. Here's some examples of the sorcerer in his chariot and on foot. We were now 3 months in and halfway there. The army was taking shape, and the addition of the chariots had completed my version of the example army, giving me over 2,000 points with the extra sorcerer too. I took a few days off painting over the New Year period, and I learnt how to do the kids' Rubik's Cubes that they got for Christmas. This gave me some inspiration for the next unit colour scheme. Chaos Hounds were up next, with the first being Old Scorpion Tail. He got the orange treatment good and proper. Hound number 2. This time I went for purple, which I think suited the contrasting bone colour spikes on his back quite well. The two-headed hound got a bright green. I'm sure you can see the Rubik's Cube influence coming through now, although I'd like to add that the Chaos Punk himself, Luke Blacksall, was also a big influence on the bright colour scheme. Hound number 4 is Mellow Yellow, and to be honest, he just looks like a normal dog, so we needed the yellow to make him a true creature of chaos. Hound number 5 got some blue features, but again he needed it to make him a little bit more chaotic. Finally, Hound number 6, featuring hooves and a dragon's nose. I painted it in red. I do like his jumping up kind of pose as well. Alongside the Chaos Hounds, as my bonus this month, I painted some Harpies. I really like these sculpts and I thought they would be quite easy to paint in my army colours. They weren't, and I had several goes at swapping colours around to different places and at least 4 attempts at different coloured spots. Eventually I went with this strange composition that I don't really feel works quite as well as I envisioned, but still it was another unit ticked off the list at the end of month 4. Month 5 came around and it was time to paint some big boys. Dragon Ogres. These are amongst my favourite of the Oldhammer sculpts of this era, with plenty of variety amongst the upper bodies, but perhaps a little bit limiting in the lower dragon poses. I spent a while deliberating on scales colour, changing my mind from green scales to black and eventually a darker red than the main body colour. By this point, my friend Johnny Watson had announced his intentions to hold a community battle based around the 4th edition rules to celebrate our achievements of painting our new armies. With this knowledge, I decided I would paint Centaurs in the final month, as Centaurs were missing from the 5th edition army book altogether, which is what I usually played. So this would be a great opportunity to get them out on the battlefield and a great excuse to get them painted. The bonus mini this month was this old Citadel C29 Hydra. It's a lot smaller than you think, and to be honest, the stats aren't the best for these guys, especially in 5th edition, when bound monsters were nerfed quite a bit compared to 4th. This guy will probably find more use on the battlefield as a Chaos spawn. A part I think he fits quite well, with his slug-like body and snake-like heads. Here's the month's work altogether, and the army so far, with the latest units added. I think there must be nearly 3,000 points here now. The final month was upon us, March 2026. That's month 6. These Centaurs all have some very creative names. The first is wearing a mask and armed with a sword, called Bloodscream Eyemane. I quite like his washed out purplish mask, with his green hair. I continued the general theme of the army by painting all of these horse bodies black, like the steeds and hounds of before. Centaur number 2 is called Clubber Doomtrot. He once again is rocking the green hair and a mighty club, although these are another example of how small the 80s miniatures actually were compared to later times. You'll see how small they are next to the Marauder Centaur Lord leading them in a moment. Centaur 3 is called Longbeard Bloodhorse. Was the green beard too far? No, of course not. This is Chaos. This guy is very Viking-ish, which I like in a Chaos army. Centaur 4 is Bobash Deathhoof. Green Mohawk was a no-brainer by this point. A lot of these old metals were lacking some details too, especially on the muscle definition, so I added quite a lot of that by hand to unify the sculpts a little bit more. The final Centaur is a Lord of the Marauder variety. He's huge and very front heavy and absolutely full of character and interesting details, without being awkward to paint. I think his huge shield, although was a worry at first, worked okay in the end. These pictures don't show it very well, but he features a snake on his shoulder pad, and I wanted it to be green really, but as his hair was already green, I didn't want it to get lost and clash, so I went with a purple. A bit garish, I know, but it turns out it's mostly all hidden by that huge shield anyway, so it was all wasted deliberation time. That completed the unit, and the challenge was one step closer to completion. Next job was to finish a battle standard bearer conversion that I'd started in earlier months, and obviously paint him a huge banner. I restarted this banner several times, not being happy with it, but eventually I found a design to run with. Not entirely pleased with it, but for how often I'll actually use a BSB, I'll go with it. I think the shading could have used a bit more work, but at least it is nice and bright and colourful. The mini himself is just a later 5th edition multi-part knight, with a big pole added and that same banner top that features throughout the army. The final miniature to paint was the only special character in the army, Mordrek the Damned. There is no official miniature for this character from this era of Warhammer, and so it was an opportunity to be a little bit creative. His stance is naturally quite wide, which allowed him to be placed on a steed with relative ease, and as his tab was already missing, I didn't feel too bad about bending his legs out a little bit just to accommodate the Battlemaster's steed upon which he rides. I did have several options for his ride, but I genuinely love the Battlemaster's horse sculpt, so I went with it. His sword held aloft creates a dominant pose. I painted him a little bit more black heavy than the other knights in the army to signal him as someone a bit special. His shield was painted with the Eye of Chaos on it, to make him again stand out a little bit. As the barding for the horse was black, I highlighted the horse body itself in more bluish tones to differentiate between the blacks. So, here we are, the completed army in all of its red glory. And that's it, the end of my guided tour. my plan for the future is to continue painting Chaos Demons from the various gods, probably starting with Khorne now that I'm getting the hang of painting red. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll hopefully catch you all in the next one.